Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're jumping into something that's, well, really shifted things in the digital world. Non-fungible tokens, NFTs.
That's right.
You shared some great source material that lays out what they are, why they're important, and we're really keen to unpack that with you.
Absolutely. I mean, think about digital stuff, art, music, even game items. It used to be so easy to just copy things, right?
Yeah?
True ownership was, well, tricky.
Yeah, definitely.
So our mission today, based on that source material, is really to figure out how NFTs fix that. We'll break down what makes them different, look at the potential, but also the downsides.
Okay, let's unpack this then. First things first. What is an NFT, really?
Okay, so fundamentally, the source defines an NFT as a unique digital identifier.
An identifier.
Yeah, and it lives on a blockchain. It uses that tech, which is why people often call them, blockchain-based tokens.
Right, okay, so they use blockchain, like crypto. But what do? What's their actual function?
Your main job, according to the source, is to act like a digital certificate.
Like a certificate.
Exactly. A certificate that proves ownership and authenticity for an asset. And that asset, it can be purely digital, like art or music, or even linked to a physical thing.
Huh. A digital proof of ownership. I can immediately see why that's a big deal when digital files are so easy to copy. What makes them tick? What are the sort of core features the source mentions?
It points to two main things. First, they're described as irrevocable.
Irrevocable, meaning permanent.
Pretty much, like
Yeah.
a record that can't just be erased or changed easily. And second, this is maybe the most important part, each NFT has a distinctive digital signature.
Okay.
And that signature is what makes it totally unique. You can't just swap one for another identical one because there are no identical ones.
Got it. So that unique permanent identity is really behind their rise, especially now that so much valuable stuff is, purely digital, which brings me to something people often get confused about. If NFTs and Bitcoin both use blockchain, how are they actually different? They seem related, but they're clearly not the same thing.
Yeah, that's a common question.
Yeah.
They do share that basic programming, the blockchain part.
Right.
But the crucial difference, and the source really highlights this, is something called fungibility.
Fungibility.
Right.
Hear that a lot with crypto.
Exactly. So Bitcoin, or like a dollar bill, those are fungible. You can trade one Bitcoin for another or $1 for another, and you've got the exact same value, the same thing. They're interchangeable. That's what fungible means.
Okay, so non-fungible means the opposite. You can't swap them like that?
Precisely.
Yeah.
NFTs are non-fungible. You can't just trade one for another and have it be considered the same thing, even if they're, say, both digital art pieces.
Why not?
Because of that unique digital signature we just talked about. The source explains that signature ties the token to that specific asset. It makes it absolutely one of a kind.
Okay, so my NFT painting with its signature is completely different from your NFT painting with its signature, no matter what.
Exactly that.
And that uniqueness, that's the core of how NFTs are changing. Well, digital ownership itself, isn't it? I mean, digital assets are everywhere now, videos, music, logos.
Uh-huh.
And before, proving you were the sole owner or stopping copies, it was tough.
That's the problem they solve. The source describes how NFTs essentially provide this verifiable link between the owner and that specific digital thing. This lets ownership be clearly assigned, often directly back to the person who actually created it.
So it empowers the creators, gives them more control.
Yes, definitely. It gives them a way to maintain ownership and sort of manage how their work is used, which wasn't really reliable before. Because there's this record on the blockchain network, it tackles theft and misuse.
Right.
The source actually puts it nicely, saying this whole thing has brought a sigh of relief to authentic digital creators.
A sigh of relief, yeah, I bet. Given how easy it was to just grab digital stuff without credit or payment. Okay, so beyond just solving that ownership puzzle, what other big impacts are NFTs having, according to the source?
Well, the source points out a few major things. For starters, they offer creators, artists especially, a new and unique way to make money directly from their work.
Right, new revenue streams, bypassing some of the old gatekeepers.
Potentially, yes. And another interesting point the source makes is about collectibles. NFTs have apparently sparked a revival of the collectibles market.
How so?
By giving a modern way to authenticate and verify digital collectibles. Think digital trading cards, virtual items in games, unique avatars. They've brought that idea of scarcity and real ownership to things that are purely digital.
That's fascinating. So, like, taking the old idea of collecting rare stamps or baseball cards, but for the digital age, with proof you own it.
Exactly. And this hasn't just opened doors for creators. It's also pulled in collectors who are interested in this idea of value of digital scarcity.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. Where are we actually seeing NFTs being used? What are some concrete applications the source mentions?
Right, so the source talks about the immense potential, but also notes it's still early days, a nascent stage. But we're already seeing them pop up in quite a few areas.
Like video games, yeah. That seems like a pretty obvious fit.
Absolutely. Gaming is a big one. NFTs can represent those in-game items, a weapon, maybe some armor, even virtual land. The idea is the player could truly own that item, maybe even take it outside the game someday.
Okay. And music. I've definitely heard about musicians using NFTs.
Yes, that's another one highlighted. Musicians releasing songs or maybe limited edition versions, unique experiences as NFTs. It's a new way to connect with fans and generate income directly.
What about fashion? That seems less digital.
It's surprising, right? But the source mentions companies like Nike actually using NFTs linked to physical shoes. They apparently have a patent for connecting an NFT to physical goods.
Wow, okay. Linking the digital token to the actual sneaker, that's blurring lines.
It really is. And then, of course, there's art. That's where a lot of people first heard about NFTs.
Yeah, the big headlines were often about digital art sales.
And the source agrees it's been transformative there. NFTs created huge new opportunities for digital art animations, images, all sorts of purely digital works. Artists can sell directly, build relationships with collectors. It's changed things.
Okay, so we've covered what they are, how they're different, where they're being used. What about the upsides? What does the source frame as the main advantages of NFTs?
The source lays out three main strengths. First, high reliability.
Reliability.
Yeah, because they're on the blockchain, that ownership record is described as having utmost security. It's really, really hard for anyone to mess with that record.
Okay, secure, verifiable ownership. That's a big plus. What else?
Second is their limited nature. That scarcity, the fact that each one is unique, is what the source says makes them potentially highly valuable. It creates desire in a way a simple digital file copy doesn't.
Right, scarcity driving value. Classic economics, but digital. And the third?
The third is ownership itself. Plain and simple. NFTs act as concrete proof of who owns what digital thing. The source even calls this a blessing for digital creators who didn't have great ways to assert ownership online before.
Security, scarcity, and clear ownership. Those definitely sound like strong points for their potential. The source seems quite positive on these aspects.
They are significant benefits, yes.
But, like you said, it's not all sunshine and rainbows. New tech always has hurdles. What does the source say are the main disadvantages or limitations?
It flags three important ones. First up, illiquidity.
Meaning it's hard to sell them sometimes.
Exactly. The market is called relatively new, so it's often less liquid than, say, the stock market. Finding someone to buy your specific NFT at the price you want, when you want, it can be tricky. Plus, the source mentions prices are highly volatile, which makes that liquidity issue even worse.
Okay, so not like selling Apple stock. You might be stuck with your digital collectible for a while or sell it for way less than you hoped. What's the second downside?
The second one is about environment-related consequences.
Ah, the energy usage.
Right. Creating NFTs, the minting process can use a significant volume of energy. The source calls it an energy-intensive process, and that raises serious environmental questions depending on which blockchain is used.
Yeah, that's a huge debate across the whole crypto space. Okay, and the third limitation.
The third is the absence of regulations. The source points to a lack of concrete regulations and rules.
Kind of a Wild West situation.
Sort of, yeah.
Yeah.
It creates risks and uncertainty, and it makes it extremely challenging, as the source puts it, to protect investors or creators if there's a dispute.
Okay, so illiquidity, environmental impact, and lack of clear rules. Definitely important things to weigh up against the benefits.
Absolutely. You need to see both sides.
So wrapping this up, the picture painted by the source material is pretty clear. NFTs have really changed the conversation around digital ownership. They offer this verifiable protection, allowing creators and others to actually own digital things in a way that was really hard before. We're seeing that ripple through art, games, even fashion.
Right. Where proving ownership of a digital file was murky, NFTs bring clarity via the blockchain record.
Yeah.
And like you said, weighing the value means looking at those core advantages, the reliability, the scarcity, the clear ownership proof, but also being really aware of the current drawbacks, the potential illiquidity, the environmental questions, and that regulatory gap.
But despite those drawbacks, the source still seems to suggest there's a lot of promise here.
That's definitely the feeling. It acknowledges the challenges and the fact that it's still early days, that nascent stage. Again, but concludes, NFTs have shown immense promise.
Hmm.
And it even looks ahead, suggesting that in the future, the capabilities and features may get even better, which can mean they redefine digital ownership even more dramatically down the line.
This has been a really fascinating dive into NFTs, all thanks to the source material you shared. Seriously, thank you for giving us the chance to explore this.
It's a space that's definitely moving fast. So maybe a final thought for you to chew on, building on that source material. Given that NFTs are still so new and the source thinks the tech might improve, how do you think things might shift? The balance between all that potential for digital ownership versus the very real challenges like the environment or the lack of rules. How might that evolve in the next few years?
That's a great question. Definitely something to keep an eye on. We really encourage you to keep digging into this based on what we've talked about today.